Have you ever found yourself staring at someone who can barely string together an intelligent sentence, as they climb into a luxury car that costs more than your annual salary? That gut-wrenching moment when you realize the person who barely passed high school is now vacationing in places you've only seen on Instagram, while you're still calculating if you can afford takeout this weekend. It's that silent question that burns inside you. How is this possible? I'm smarter than them. I worked harder. I did everything right. So why am I the one drowning in debt while they seem to effortlessly accumulate wealth? Has this ever happened to you? That moment when your education, your intelligence, your years of hard work suddenly feel worthless. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. What I'm about to share with you today might fundamentally change how you view success, wealth, and your own potential. The truth is, we've been sold a devastating lie. A lie so compelling that most of us never question it. We're told from childhood that being smart, getting good grades, working hard, and playing by the rules is the formula for financial success. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That the world rewards intelligence and effort with prosperity. But look around you. The evidence contradicting this belief is everywhere. The financial landscape isn't designed to reward the smartest people. It's designed to reward the most strategic ones. As Neville Goddard might have observed if he were alive today, the outer world is nothing more than a reflection of inner arrangements. Those less intelligent people haven't won through luck. They've mastered an entirely different game. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might shatter some of your most deeply held beliefs about success and wealth. The uncomfortable reality is that the system doesn't reward your GPA or how many hours you work. It rewards manipulation, leverage, timing, and psychological mastery. Think about it. While you were studying for exams, memorizing formulas, and writing perfect essays, what were these seemingly less intelligent people doing? They weren't mastering subjects. They were mastering human nature. They weren't learning rules. They were learning how to bend them. They weren't seeking perfection. They were seeking power. And here's where it gets interesting. What if I told you that your intelligence, that brilliant mind you're so proud of, might actually be the very thing holding you back from financial freedom? What if your ability to see complexity, to understand nuance, to appreciate multiple perspectives has become your greatest financial liability? The world operates on strategic maneuvering rather than raw intelligence. And once you understand this fundamental truth, everything changes. The question isn't, why are they rich while I'm struggling? The real question is, what game have they been playing that I've been completely blind to? If you found value in today's insights about wealth psychology, hit that subscribe button to join our community of strategic thinkers. I'm constantly exploring the hidden principles that separate the financially struggling from the financially free, and I don't want you to miss any of these transformational conversations. The truth is hiding in plain sight, and it reveals a fundamental paradox of success. It's not what you know, it's how you use what you know. The tragedy I see in brilliant minds every day is their tendency to drown in knowledge while starving in action. They become intellectual hoarders, collecting facts, theories, and insights, yet somehow remain paralyzed when it comes to applying them. While you're overthinking every decision, analyzing all possible outcomes, and waiting for perfect conditions, those you consider intellectually inferior are making moves, taking calculated risks, and positioning themselves to win. Their journey isn't hampered by the need for complete information or perfect timing. They understand that imperfect action trumps perfect planning every single time. This mindset difference creates two entirely different approaches to life. Think about it as the difference between studying chess and actually playing it. The intellectual mind studies the chessboard of life, analyzing every piece, memorizing classic moves, and understanding theoretical possibilities. They become experts in how the game should be played. Meanwhile, the strategically minded person, following what Neville Goddard called the law of assumption, simply plays the game. They move pieces, make mistakes, learn from them, and keep advancing. One seeks logic and fairness, the other seeks leverage and results. One wants to understand the system, the other wants to use it. This creates a profound revelation about wealth that most people never grasp. Financial success follows influence, not intelligence. The hidden truth of money is that it flows toward those who can move others emotionally, not those who can impress them intellectually. This explains the puzzling reality of why people who might seem intellectually unremarkable can command attention, respect, and ultimately wealth. They've discovered something that most educated people miss entirely. Human emotion moves faster than human logic. While you're constructing the perfect rational argument, they're triggering the perfect emotional response. While you're trying to convince people with facts, they're connecting with people through feelings. The decisions that drive wealth to buy, invest, follow, hire are primarily emotional decisions dressed up as rational ones. Your transformation begins when you recognize that the brain you're so proud of has been operating in the wrong domain. The impact of this realization can be jarring at first. The very mental patterns that made you successful academically might be the same ones sabotaging your financial growth. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these seemingly less intelligent people are leveraging three core principles that the educated mind often overlooks. Completely. These principles explain why they can navigate the complex waters of wealth creation with seemingly less mental horsepower, yet achieve results that leave the intellectually gifted scratching their heads in confusion. Write in the comments, "I've seen this pattern," if you've noticed this dynamic playing out in your own life or with people you know. The first revelation that changed my entire perspective came when I observed a former classmate named Mark. He was a college dropout who now consistently out-earns his academically superior peers, including those with advanced degrees and impressive credentials. How? By grasping one fundamental truth that most educated people never learn: people buy belief, not facts. While the intellectuals in his industry spent years debating algorithmic theories and technical minutiae, Mark was busy capturing emotions and selling feelings: confidence, excitement, belonging. He understood that attention equals money in today's economy. His hidden truth wasn't about having the most knowledge. It was about creating the strongest emotional connection. The transformation in his finances wasn't gradual. It was explosive. His journey reveals something profound. In the marketplace of ideas and influence, your conviction often matters more than your content. People aren't primarily moved by information, they're moved by certainty, and certainty is a feeling, not a fact. This explains why someone who speaks with absolute conviction about a mediocre idea often outperforms someone who hesitantly presents a brilliant one. This revelation connects directly to the second principle I observed through Sarah's story. She wasn't the most knowledgeable employee in her department, far from it, but she mastered something her more capable colleagues completely ignored: strategic visibility. While her co-workers focused on perfecting their work in isolation, Sarah ensured her accomplishments were seen. She spoke with unearned yet convincing confidence. She claimed credit appropriately and positioned herself as essential to key projects. The result? Within 2 years, she received promotions over technically superior colleagues who were bewildered by her rise. What Sarah intuitively understood was that perception creates reality in professional environments. Her mindset wasn't about deception, it was about presentation. She knew that in any organization, your value isn't determined by what you contribute. It's determined by what others believe you contribute. These stories illuminate perhaps the most uncomfortable truth about financial success. It doesn't automatically flow to the deserving. It gravitates toward those who strategically position themselves to appear deserving. This isn't fair, but it is real. The decisions that govern your financial destiny aren't made based on your objective value, but on your perceived value. Think of intelligence as potential energy, stored, latent, and invisible until activated. Strategic action is what converts that potential into kinetic results that the world can see and reward. The impact of this revelation should fundamentally alter how you approach your career, business, and financial life. Behind the scenes of every financial success story is this critical distinction between being valuable and being perceived as valuable. The former is a private reality. The latter is a public one. And in the economy of attention we now live in, public perception drives financial reward far more than private reality. Let me show you how these principles manifest through 3 specific strategies that the financially successful use to convert ordinary opportunities into extraordinary results, regardless of their IQ or educational background. Comment below with "Perception creates reality" if you've noticed how the way others perceive you affects the opportunities that come your way. The first strategic advantage these seemingly less intelligent people have mastered is avoiding what Neville Goddard might call the goodness trap. This hidden psychological barrier cripples so many brilliant minds. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that virtues like humility, honesty, patience, and fairness will somehow magically translate into financial success. We hold on to this comforting illusion because it aligns with our moral compass. But here's the revelation that changes everything. These qualities aren't tools for building wealth. They're luxuries, afforded by those who already have it. The wealthy don't succeed because they're virtuous. They can afford to be virtuous because they've already succeeded. Their journey to financial freedom likely required moments of bold self-promotion instead of humility, strategic timing instead of endless patience, and calculated advantage instead of rigid fairness. This isn't about abandoning your moral compass. It's about recognizing that the rules of the financial game aren't aligned with the ethical framework you were taught. The blueprint for success requires a psychological evolution where you separate your moral identity from your strategic actions. The wealthy understand this distinction intuitively. The second advantage that propels seemingly average minds to extraordinary wealth is their focus on understanding people rather than principles. While you're studying economic theories, market dynamics, and investment strategies, they're studying something far more valuable: human behavior. Patterns. The secret weapon of the less intelligent rich person is their superior ability to read people rather than textbooks. They've discovered that predicting what people will do next is infinitely more profitable than memorizing abstract theories. This human-centered approach allows them to anticipate market movements, customer desires, and competitive reactions before they happen. Their intuitive grasp of psychology gives them an almost unfair advantage in negotiations, sales, leadership, and investment timing. The third mindset difference creates perhaps the most significant divergence in financial outcomes. Intelligence naturally focuses on complexity, seeing nuance, appreciating variables, and acknowledging interconnected systems. This analytical depth is valuable in many contexts, but can become paralyzing in wealth creation. The strategic mind, by contrast, ruthlessly focuses on control, simplifying the world into moves, reactions, and power dynamics. Rather than trying to understand everything, they identify the few leverage points they can actually influence. It's like comparing two poker players. One studies probabilities, game theory, and mathematical models. The other reads faces, emotional tells, and psychological patterns. The latter consistently takes home more chips. This distinction explains why some of the most financially successful people seem intellectually unremarkable. They're not trying to comprehend the infinite complexity of markets. They're identifying the handful of factors they can control to tilt outcomes in their favor. They're not calculating exact probabilities. They're manipulating perception to create advantages. Let me show you how these three mindset differences manifest in the specific techniques that separate financial strugglers from financial masters. Techniques that have nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with strategic positioning. Drop a comment saying, "I've been in the goodness trap," if you've ever held yourself back by trying to be too fair, too honest, or too humble in your financial pursuits. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most intelligent people never confront. Your brilliance might be making you predictable and exploitable. It sounds counterintuitive, but think about it. When you approach problems the right way, following logical frameworks and established principles, your moves become easy to anticipate. The pattern recognition that serves you well in academic settings becomes a liability in the wealth game. While you're busy proving your brilliance through complex analysis and perfect execution, the strategically minded are quietly converting your intellectual output into their profit. Look around, and you'll see this pattern everywhere. You write reports, they sell them. You design products, they market them. You build systems, they brand them. The transformation from knowledge producer to knowledge capitalizer represents the fundamental shift that separates the financially struggling from the financially free. This exploitation happens because most educated people fail to recognize a fundamental truth. The real world is a battlefield, not a classroom. In classrooms, you're rewarded for knowing the rules. On battlefields, you're rewarded for effectively bending them. The revelation here isn't that rules don't matter. It's that understanding the unwritten rules matters infinitely more than mastering the written ones. Life's financial game doesn't celebrate those who know the rulebook by heart. It celebrates those who identify the gaps between rules and exploit them for advantage. The mindset shift required here is profound, moving from being an overthinker who analyzes everything to becoming a strategic observer who reads the underlying dynamics of the game. One is paralyzed by options, the other is empowered by opportunities. This journey of financial transformation doesn't end here. Subscribe now to continue exploring the psychology behind wealth creation with me. Each video peels back another layer of the strategies that the financially successful use. Strategies that have nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with positioning. This brings us to perhaps the most counterintuitive insight of all. Raw intelligence without strategic application becomes a form of sophisticated helplessness. It's like having a Ferrari engine with no transmission, immense power that goes nowhere, as Neville Goddard taught. Through his principle that imagination creates reality, when you start thinking like the financial elite, you stop waiting for fairness and start creating advantage, not through ruthlessness, but through strategic awareness. The journey from intelligence to wealth requires developing what I call tactical cunning, the ability to see beyond surface-level information to identify leverage points others miss. It's about recognizing when to showcase your brilliance and when to strategically conceal it. It's understanding that sometimes the most intelligent move is to let others underestimate you. Behind the scenes of every financial success story is this balance between intellectual capacity and strategic application. The people who seem dumber than you aren't lacking intelligence. They're simply applying it differently. They use it as a tool rather than an identity. They deploy it strategically rather than displaying it constantly. This subtle distinction creates dramatically different results. Let me share with you the three core principles these strategic thinkers use to convert ordinary circumstances into extraordinary wealth. These principles explain how people with seemingly average intelligence consistently outperform brilliant overthinkers in the financial arena. If you've ever felt that your intelligence might sometimes work against you rather than for you, write "tactically cunning" in the comments. It's a powerful acknowledgement that you're ready to transform how you apply your brilliance. The first principle that separates the financially struggling from the financially free is what I call strategic patience. This isn't the passive waiting that most people practice. It's the calculated restraint that creates optimal timing. The financially sophisticated understand a paradox that most miss entirely. Sometimes doing nothing is the most powerful move of all. While most people rush into opportunities, desperately trying to be first, the strategically patient person waits for precise alignment. When market conditions, personal readiness, and opportunity converge. Their journey isn't about random action, but purposeful timing. As Neville Goddard taught, the right moment is not when you're desperately seeking results, but when the inner and outer worlds have aligned. I witnessed this firsthand with an investor friend who seemed intellectually unremarkable, yet consistently outperformed Wall Street experts. His secret? He never chased trends. While others rushed into crowded markets, he would wait, sometimes for years, until a sector was completely abandoned before making his move. This counterintuitive discipline created returns that seemed magical to outside observers, but were simply the result of strategic patience. The second principle transforms how you view resources, especially debt, perhaps the most misunderstood tool in wealth creation. Here's the revelation that changed my entire perspective. While you use debt to survive, the financially sophisticated use it to thrive. This distinction creates completely different life trajectories. The blueprint for this transformation begins with understanding that debt itself is neutral, neither good nor bad. Its impact depends entirely on what it purchases. Debt that buys depreciating items creates financial quicksand. Debt that acquires appreciating assets or generates cash flow creates financial freedom. This is why your debt drowns you, while theirs elevates them. Behind the scenes, the wealthy use leverage, other people's money, time, skills, and platforms to create disproportionate results with minimal personal investment. They understand that direct effort creates linear returns, while leveraged effort creates exponential ones. The mindset shift here isn't about working harder, it's about creating multiplication rather than addition. I remember being shocked when a real estate investor explained his portfolio to me. With just $100,000 of his own money, he controlled over $2 million in property values. The revelation wasn't just about real estate, it was about the psychological willingness to use financial leverage that most educated people avoid due to their aversion to debt. This leads directly to the third principle that the seemingly less intelligent use to create wealth: substitution. When conventional paths are blocked, they don't surrender, they find alternative routes. Their journey isn't about forcing doors open, it's about finding windows. This adaptability creates possibilities that the rigid mind never discovers. Let me walk you through how these three principles combine to create what I call asymmetric advantages, situations where you can win far more than you might lose, creating mathematical inevitability in your financial future. If debt has been more of a burden than a tool in your life, write "leverage shift" in the comments, acknowledging that you're ready to transform how you view and use financial instruments. The true Power of leverage extends far beyond just money. It's a universal principle that the financially sophisticated apply to every dimension of their lives. This revelation changed everything for me. While most people only leverage debt, the strategically minded leverage relationships, information, timing, and even perception to create disproportionate results with minimal personal investment. Think about relationships. While most people network randomly, hoping for lucky breaks, the wealth-minded cultivate specific connections that create multiplicative opportunities. They understand that certain relationships function as force multipliers. One conversation with the right person can accomplish more than years of individual effort. Their social architecture isn't about quantity, but strategic quality. The same principle applies to information. Having knowledge a few days or even hours before others creates extraordinary leverage. I remember watching a friend make a six-figure profit because he discovered a company's expansion plans just 48 hours before the public announcement. The revelation wasn't the specific opportunity, but the pattern behind it. How being slightly ahead of information curves consistently creates outsized returns. This force multiplier effect explains why some people accomplish more in a month than others do in years. They're not working harder. They're positioning themselves at leverage points where minimal input creates maximum output. Their journey isn't about effort. It's about strategic positioning. This connects directly to the substitution principle, perhaps the most underrated skill in wealth creation. When faced with obstacles, average minds surrender, while strategic minds substitute. They don't waste energy forcing locked doors open. They simply find windows, understanding that there are multiple routes to any destination, especially financial independence. I witnessed this mindset in action when a business owner faced a crushing regulatory change that would have bankrupted his company. Instead of fighting the impossible or accepting defeat, he completely pivoted his business model, turning what seemed like a death sentence into a competitive advantage. The transformation wasn't about intelligence, but adaptability, the willingness to abandon the expected path and create an alternative. This adaptability leads to perhaps the most powerful concept in wealth creation: asymmetric advantages. This is the hidden blueprint behind almost every fortune. The financially sophisticated don't just take random risks. They deliberately design situations where they win significantly more than they lose, creating mathematical inevitability in their favor over time. They structure investments where they might lose 1x, but could gain 10x or 100x. They enter business arrangements where downside is clearly limited, but upside is virtually unlimited. This isn't gambling, it's calculated positioning. The mindset shift here isn't about avoiding risk. It's about ensuring that when risks are taken, the potential reward dramatically outweighs the potential loss. Let me show you how these principles manifest in everyday decisions that separate the financially struggling from the financially free. Decisions that have nothing to do with IQ and everything to do with strategic awareness. If you've ever noticed yourself giving up on a goal because the obvious path was blocked, rather than finding an alternative route, type "finding windows" in the comments. One of the most profound revelations I've encountered on this journey is how the financially sophisticated operate through systems, not effort. This fundamental difference creates entirely different life trajectories. While most people work harder to earn more, trading hours for dollars in an endless cycle, the strategically minded build wealth machines that generate returns without their direct involvement. Think about the transformation this creates. The average person's income stops when they stop working. The system builder's income continues flowing whether they're present or not, breaking the direct connection between time and money. This isn't just a financial difference, it's a complete paradigm shift in how value is created and captured. I remember my surprise when a successful entrepreneur explained that he hadn't personally fulfilled a client request in over 3 years, yet his business continued to grow. The blueprint wasn't about his absence, it was about the architecture he had created, a value delivery mechanism that operated independently of his daily involvement. His journey wasn't about working in the business, but designing its autonomous function. This system-oriented approach connects directly to how the financially sophisticated leverage information asymmetry, perhaps the most powerful yet least discussed driver of wealth creation. They profit not from knowing things others don't know, but from knowing things slightly before others know them, positioning themselves ahead of market movements and sentiment shifts. Behind the scenes, they create information networks that function as early warning systems, allowing them to capitalize on opportunities before they become obvious to everyone else. These networks aren't random. They're deliberately constructed to provide strategic insights in specific domains. The impact isn't about having inside information, which would be illegal. It's about connecting dots faster than the crowd. I witnessed this advantage when an investor friend received a call about a neighborhood rezoning decision 3 days before it hit the local news. That narrow time advantage allowed him to acquire property at pre-announcement prices that doubled in value within months. The revelation wasn't the specific opportunity, but the pattern, how being slightly ahead of information curves consistently creates outsized returns. Perhaps the most significant psychological transformation I've observed in the financially successful is their shift from scarcity thinking to opportunity recognition. While most people see threats everywhere, focusing on what might go wrong, what they might lose, or why something won't work, the wealth-minded train themselves to spot opportunities in every situation, especially in volatile or challenging environments. This mindset recalibration allows them to capitalize on the same market conditions that terrify others, turning potential crises into profit centers. When markets crash, they see buying opportunities. When industries transform, they spot emerging niches. When problems arise, they identify solution-based businesses. Their perception isn't about optimism. It's about strategic opportunity recognition. Let me walk you through how these 3 advantages, systems thinking, information leverage, and opportunity recognition, combine to create what I call inevitable wealth, where financial growth becomes a matter of when, not if. If you've caught yourself stuck in the time for money trap, spending more hours working just to increase your income, type systems not effort in the comments to acknowledge that you're ready for a more leveraged approach to wealth creation. Perhaps the most counterintuitive advantage I've observed in the financially sophisticated is their strategic use of calculated losses. While most people frantically avoid any form of failure, the wealth-minded understand that small, intentional losses can create positioning for massive future gains. This mindset shift transforms how they approach risk entirely. They don't avoid all failures. They use them as deliberate stepping stones toward larger victories that others can't yet see. I witnessed this transformation in a business owner who intentionally lost money for 18 months entering a new market. Not because of poor planning, but because he recognized that the short-term losses were creating market position, customer relationships, and operational expertise that would later become nearly impossible for competitors to overcome. The revelation here isn't about recklessness, it's about strategic positioning. Behind the scenes, these calculated losses function as investments in future leverage points that eventually create exponential rather than incremental returns. Their journey isn't about avoiding all pain. It's about enduring strategic discomfort that serves a larger design. This ability to accept calculated losses connects directly to perhaps the Most powerful psychological advantage in wealth creation: emotional detachment from financial outcomes. While most people ride emotional roller coasters with every market fluctuation, the financially sophisticated maintain psychological distance from their decisions, preventing the fear, greed, and attachment that typically destroy wealth. This emotional equilibrium allows them to make objective moves when others are paralyzed by anxiety or blinded by excitement. They can buy when blood is in the streets and sell when champagne is flowing, not because they lack feelings, but because they've mastered them. The mindset recalibration here isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming clear. I remember watching a trader friend maintain complete composure during a market crash that sent most investors into panic. While others were selling at the bottom, driven by fear, he was methodically buying quality assets at discount prices. The impact wasn't from his market knowledge, but his emotional discipline, his ability to execute strategy without being hijacked by sentiment. This emotional mastery extends to how the financially sophisticated approach relationships. While most people network randomly, hoping for serendipitous connections, the strategically minded cultivate relationships with specific value dynamics in mind. They deliberately connect with those who can exponentially increase their opportunities, creating ecosystems of mutual advancement rather than superficial contact. Lists. Their relationship architecture isn't about collecting business cards. It's about building specific bridges to information, resources, and opportunities that align with their long-term vision. These connections aren't transactional, they're transformational, creating value flows that benefit all parties involved while advancing strategic objectives. Let me show you how these psychological advantages, strategic loss tolerance, emotional discipline, and deliberate relationship building, combine to create what Neville Goddard might call the invisible architecture of wealth, where financial growth becomes a natural expression of inner mastery. If you've ever found yourself paralyzed by fear when making financial decisions, type calculated risk in the comments to acknowledge that you're ready to transform your relationship with uncertainty. What separates the financially secure from the perpetually anxious isn't just their ability to earn, it's their ability to protect. What they earn through what I call income moats. The financially sophisticated don't just generate revenue streams, they fortify them with defensive barriers that competitors can't easily breach or replicate. This protective architecture transforms temporary success into lasting prosperity. These moats take multiple forms: specialized skills that few possess, intellectual property that creates legal protection, or strategic market positioning that establishes genuine barriers to entry. I remember being fascinated when a consultant friend explained why he deliberately niched down to serve an obscure industry segment. The revelation wasn't about narrowing his market. It was about creating unassailable positioning where he could command premium rates without serious competition. The blueprint here isn't about limiting opportunity. It's about creating defensibility. Behind the scenes, these income moats allow the financially sophisticated to sleep peacefully while others constantly worry about being replaced, outcompeted, or commoditized. Their journey isn't about perpetual hustling. It's about strategic positioning that creates lasting advantage. This defensive mindset connects directly to how the wealthy convert their knowledge into wealth-generating systems. While most experts simply trade their expertise for hourly fees, creating the high-paid version of time-for-money trap, the strategically minded transform what they know into scalable assets that can be sold repeatedly without additional effort. They package their insights into courses, templates, frameworks, software, or subscription models that create multiplication rather than addition. The transformation here isn't about abandoning service, it's about transcending its limitations through systematic delivery that breaks the direct connection between time and income. I witnessed this evolution when a therapist friend shifted from seeing 30 clients weekly to creating a therapeutic methodology that now generates 7 figures annually through training other practitioners. The impact wasn't from abandoning his expertise, but from repackaging it into a system that could reach thousands rather than dozens. Perhaps the most subtle yet powerful advantage I've observed is what I call strategic invisibility, understanding when visibility creates advantage and when silence preserves it. The financially sophisticated don't make every move publicly. They operate with calculated transparency, revealing progress while concealing process. They understand that mystery creates magnetism, that selective visibility often amplifies influence more effectively than constant exposure. This controlled revelation creates an aura of inevitable success that attracts opportunities while simultaneously protecting their most valuable methods from replication. Let me show you how these protective strategies, income moats, knowledge systematization, and strategic invisibility, combine to create what Neville Goddard might call the architecture of sustainable abundance, where wealth not only grows, but becomes increasingly resistant to external threats. If you've been trading your expertise for money without creating systems that work without your direct involvement, type knowledge assets in the comments to signal your readiness to transform your intellectual capital into true financial assets. One of the most powerful revelations I've encountered on this journey is how the financially sophisticated treat their emotions, not as guides for decision-making, but as data points to be observed and managed. While most people wait for motivation or confidence before taking action, the wealth-minded move with strategic precision, regardless of their emotional state, creating consistency that compounds over time. They've discovered something profound about human psychology. Emotions are like weather patterns, useful to notice, but potentially catastrophic to follow when making financial decisions. Fear tells you to sell at market bottoms. Greed pushes you to buy at market tops. Impatience convinces you to abandon strategies before they mature. The transformation isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about preventing emotions from hijacking strategy. I remember watching a real estate investor friend close on a property during a personal crisis. When I asked how he maintained focus, his answer changed my perspective forever. I don't need to feel good to make good decisions. This emotional discipline prevented him from missing a generational buying opportunity that less disciplined investors lost to their temporary feelings. This emotional mastery connects directly to how the financially sophisticated manage their reputation as strategic capital. As Neville Goddard might observe, perception shapes opportunity in profound ways. The wealthy don't protect their ego, they protect their image, understanding the causal chain that drives financial freedom. Reputation creates trust, trust creates time, and time creates maneuvering room that others don't have. Behind the scenes, they're meticulously crafting how they're perceived in specific domains that matter to their objectives. This isn't about vanity, it's about strategic positioning. The impact of a strong reputation manifests as opportunities that simply don't appear for those without credibility in their chosen arena. Their journey isn't about being liked by everyone. It's about being respected by the right people. This reputation management extends to perhaps the most subtle advantage I've observed: narrative control. Financial masters don't wait for others to define their story. They proactively shape it. Understanding that perception often matters more than reality when it comes to creating opportunities. When something goes wrong, they own the story before someone else writes it. When something goes right, they amplify it strategically. I witnessed this skill when a business owner friend faced a product failure that could have destroyed his company's reputation. Instead of hiding or deflecting, he immediately controlled the narrative, acknowledging the issue, outlining the solution, and transforming potential disaster into a demonstration of integrity. The revelation wasn't just about crisis management, it was about the power of proactive narrative shaping in all situations. Let me show you how these psychological advantages, emotional discipline, reputation management, and narrative control, combine to create what I call perception leverage, where how you're perceived becomes as valuable as what you actually do. If you've ever made a financial decision you later regretted because you were acting from emotion rather than strategy, type emotional discipline in the comments to acknowledge this critical area for your own financial transformation. Perhaps the most counterintuitive skill I've observed in the financially sophisticated is what I call strategic humility, knowing exactly when to appear unassuming and when to demonstrate power. This psychological flexibility creates opportunities that neither constant humility nor perpetual dominance could achieve alone, allowing them to be deliberately underestimated when advantageous, while commanding respect when necessary. This chameleonic quality isn't about deception, it's about tactical positioning. Behind the scenes, they're constantly assessing whether a situation calls for displaying capacity or concealing it. Sometimes being underestimated creates opportunities that being properly valued would prevent. Other times, commanding respect prevents exploitation that humility might invite. I witnessed this versatility in a business negotiation where a friend deliberately downplayed his expertise in the first meeting, allowing the other party to reveal their strategy through overconfidence. By the second meeting, he shifted completely, demonstrating deep knowledge that completely rebalanced the power dynamic. The revelation wasn't just about negotiation tactics, it was about the strategic value of controlled self-presentation in all financial interactions. This adaptability connects directly to perhaps the most profound transformation in the financially successful, the shift from reactive to deliberate. True financial evolution happens when you stop responding to circumstances and start creating them. The wealthy don't just play within the existing system, they position themselves to shape it, moving from being merely a player to becoming the game designer. This mindset recalibration changes everything. While most people wake up asking, "How do I respond to today's challenges?" the financially sophisticated ask, "How do I position myself to create tomorrow's opportunities?" Their journey isn't about navigating the maze more effectively. It's about redesigning the maze itself to favor their unique strengths. I remember the moment this distinction became clear when watching a friend launch a business. While competitors fought for market share within established categories, she created an entirely new category where she could set the rules, expectations, and standards. The impact wasn't from competing better, it was from eliminating competition entirely through categorical innovation. This deliberate approach manifests most powerfully in how the financially liberated build systems rather than chase individual results. They stop pursuing disconnected outcomes and start creating mechanisms that guarantee consistent results. Their focus shifts from controlling transactions to controlling entire categories, from moving pieces to designing the board. This systems thinking appears across every domain of their financial life. They don't just make investments, they create investment frameworks. They don't just close sales, they build sales systems. They don't just manage money, they design money machines. The transformation isn't about working harder, it's about architecting processes that create predetermined outcomes. Let me show you how these advanced strategies, situational adaptability, deliberate positioning, and systems thinking combine to create what I call strategic inevitability, where financial success becomes a matter of execution rather than hope. If you've been reacting to financial circumstances rather than deliberately creating them, type game designer in the comments to signal your readiness to shift from player to architect in your own financial journey. What fascinates me most about these wealth dynamics is how little they've actually changed throughout history. As Neville Goddard might recognize, human nature remains remarkably constant while only the tools and contexts evolve. The same strategic principles that once governed royal courts and ancient marketplaces now operate in corporate boardrooms and digital platforms. The game upgrades, but never truly ends. The psychological leverage, strategic positioning, and narrative control that determined success in Renaissance Italy still determines success on Wall Street and Silicon Valley today. The revelation isn't that manipulation exists, it's that it follows predictable patterns across all human systems. Once you recognize these patterns, you start seeing them everywhere, from politics to dating apps to corporate hierarchies to investment markets. This historical continuity brings us to perhaps the most transformative insight of all. Awareness itself becomes your first and most powerful advantage. Once you truly see the underlying dynamics of wealth creation, you can't unsee them. You begin noticing who moves emotionally versus who moves strategically. You recognize the quiet winners hiding in plain sight. You detect manipulation attempts before they capture you. I remember the moment this awareness clicked for a friend who had always struggled financially despite his intelligence. Suddenly, he could see the strategic chess moves happening around him that had previously been invisible. The impact wasn't from gaining new knowledge, it was from developing new perception. His journey wasn't about learning more facts, it was about seeing the same situations through completely different eyes. This perceptual shift creates the foundation for perhaps the most practical transformation on your wealth journey, moving from emotional reactions to strategic calculations when facing challenges. Financial evolution means responding to triggers differently. When insulted, you calculate advantage rather than defend ego. When blocked, you find substitution rather than force confrontation. When ignored, you reposition rather than chase attention. The blueprint here isn't about suppressing normal human responses. It's about inserting a strategic pause between trigger and response. This tiny gap, this moment of conscious choice, creates entirely different outcomes that compound over time. You begin living for control rather than reaction, for strategic advancement rather than emotional satisfaction. But the journey doesn't end with mastering these principles. Even the strongest financial position eventually collapses when you stop evolving. The game that makes you rich won't keep you rich. The strategy that creates your fortune won't sustain it. True financial mastery requires continuously evolving faster than those trying to copy your methods, watching the system with the focused patience of a hunter tracking prey. Let me show you how this continuous evolution manifests in what I call the 3 phases of financial consciousness that separate the temporarily successful from the permanently prosperous. Phases that explain why some people create wealth only to lose it, while others build dynasties that last for generations. If you've noticed yourself becoming more aware of the strategic games happening around you in business and finance, drop awakened perception in the comments to acknowledge this critical shift in your financial consciousness. You've stayed with me through this entire exploration of wealth psychology, and that tells me something important about you. You're ready for transformation, not just information. You're seeking the deeper patterns that explain why intelligence alone hasn't created the financial freedom you deserve. And that awareness is the first domino in a chain reaction that can completely reshape your financial future. If this conversation has sparked something inside you, a recognition perhaps that you've been playing the wrong game with the right skills, I'd love to know. Drop strategically awakened in the comments so I can see who's truly resonating with this message. Your comment helps me understand which insights are creating the most powerful shifts for this community. When you hit that like button, you're not just supporting the channel, you're signaling to yourself that you're embracing a new financial paradigm, one where your intelligence becomes a strategic weapon rather than a psychological barrier. That small action creates a subtle but powerful commitment to your own financial evolution. This journey we've been on together continues in a video I created specifically about how to transform theoretical knowledge into practical financial power. It explores the exact steps to implement these principles in your daily financial decisions. It's right here. Click and join me there to discover how to bridge the gap between understanding these concepts and living them in your financial life. The insights there pick up exactly where we're leaving off now, creating a complete blueprint for your transformation.